It's going to cost them £30,000 a year in additional employer national insurance from April 2029.
What should we do? How do we go around this?
Think what you could do with an additional £30,000 to put towards something useful, a new innovation, a new platform, a new benefit.
I'd imagine lots of organisations are going to be looking to the HR team and asking questions.
By starting early, you can do it in little incremental steps. Don't leave this till 2028.
I don't know. We started talking about grass and gardening. I'm pretty sure this is an all-time low for us. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Benefits Wise, a podcast where we help HR and people managers get more value from their employee benefit strategy. Today's topic is one that probably isn't keeping many HRs awake just yet, but perhaps it should be. We're going to be looking at the upcoming changes to pension salary sacrifice in 2029. We're going to be looking at what they mean for organizations and their employees, and more importantly, whether there's anything businesses can do now to avoid unnecessary costs down the line. To guide us through it all, I'm joined with our pension experts, David Pugh. David, welcome back, and thank you for joining me. How's things in the Pugh household?
Absolutely fine. We have got a gardener walking around the garden today, so prizes if you spot him.
Brilliant. I hope he's not using the hosepipe, David. You know, there is a ban out there at the moment. Not cutting too much grass out, I would assume as well.
None whatsoever. It's brown as anything.
Exactly. Well, I did look at the title of today's session, and I thought, hey, you know, we're talking about salary sacrifice, and I think we're going to reach the peak of excitement when it comes to talking about employee benefits. But I guess if I pass over to you, David, I know we've got some visuals on this one, and hopefully we can bring the topic of conversation to life. So if I can hand you over the reins, and I'll dive in a few questions as we go on.
Thanks, Dan. In the last budget, it was announced that a cap is coming to salary sacrifice for pensions from April 2029. We have got a new Prime Minister, a new Chancellor, so things could change again, but we're kind of expecting to have to live with these new rules. A few people think that there's a cap on how much you pay into a pension. That's not true. What it means is there's a cap on how much can get national insurance savings for salary sacrifice. So to bring that to life, if you've got somebody earning £50,000, paying 5%, that's £2,500 a year. From April 2029, they can do that all as a salary sacrifice, but only £2,000 of it will get effectively a national insurance saving, which means £500 then becomes subject to national insurance. And that's going to make a difference. Mm-hmm. It's going to impact the business first and foremost. So we've created a modeler. We've put in a typical client, 250 employees. And if they've got a range of salaries averaging 56k, then it's going to cost them £30,000 a year in additional employer national insurance from April 2029, which is pretty chunky. If I flip that, think what you could do with an additional £30,000 to put towards something useful, a new innovation, a new platform, a new benefit. That takes some doing. So the risk here is businesses are going to have to find, for this example, £30,000 from somewhere else and make savings, make cuts, make efficiencies, which could be a bit of a challenge.
And I'd imagine lots of organisations are going to be looking to the HR team and asking questions. You know, what should we do? How do we go around this?
Exactly. And we have got some solutions, but let's first just look at the impact to people, because it's not just the business, it's also the individuals who can be caught with this. And particularly higher earning people or people who are wanting to put more into the pension are going to be hit hardest. Now, on the screen, three examples, three people. It doesn't impact them that much from a national insurance perspective. So Robin earning £50,000, paying in 5%, is only going to make £40 a year difference. So it looks like the weight's being carried by the company again, as has been with a few recent budgets and national insurance changes, not the individual. But a hidden cost is that extra £500 in my example, you're going to have to claim that back through self-assessment, or you're probably going to have to claim it back through self-assessment. We don't know for sure yet. And we know that only about 30% of higher taxpayers currently reclaim the higher tax relief through the pension. So even though this is only impacting their national insurance, we know a lot of people won't be getting their full tax relief because they don't know how to, they haven't bothered, etc. So there are going to be some hidden costs which are going to be kind of coming through. But yeah, we've got some ideas in terms of how we can minimize this. And to help understand them, if we look at two companies, so scenario one, scenario two. The first scenario is what I call a basic pension. It's kind of the auto enrollment minimum, where the company's only putting in 3%, the employee has to do 5%. In scenario two, we're looking at a really good pension. This is where the company does all the work. They pay the 8% in, the employee does nothing. Now, interestingly, from HMRC's point of view, they look identical because when scenario one goes through payroll, it looks identically like scenario two. So, Dan, you asked about what solutions, what can they do about it? Effectively, we're trying to make companies look more like scenario two, if possible, rather than scenario one.
Makes sense.
So how do we do that? Well, let's assume companies are going to be paying pay rises. And I know this isn't uniform. The days where everyone gets the 3-4% pay rise are gone. Often different people get different rates, and so you don't get one standard rate. But for simplicity, let's assume you're going to be paying a 3% pay rise over the next few years. Now, one way you can help minimize the impact is take some of that pay rise to improve the pension. Now, you might be there saying, well, I need my money today. We can do this in a way where it doesn't actually impact you in the pocket at all as an employee. So if you're in scenario one where you're paying 5% into the pension yourself, the company do 3%, well, from your pay rise, if 2% goes into your pay and 1% improves the pension, then your company pay an extra percent in, you pay 1% less. So you're now paying a bit less into the pension, and you had a slightly smaller pay rise. The net impact is you feel the full benefit of that pay rise. Now, that doesn't sound too exciting, but if you take that as a couple of steps or 3 steps, between now and 2029, we can move from that scenario A to scenario B. So effectively from a 3 and a 5% pension contribution to a 8% and a 0% contribution. So in year one, maybe you kind of redirect 1% for your pay rise into the pension. In year two, 2%, year three, 3%. And it depends on what your structure is to how that would work optimally. But what we're trying to do is create the same net pay along the way for the employees, so the employees don't feel any worse off.
David, what is the advantage of taking this 3-step process as opposed to, today we've got this structure, tomorrow we're on 8 and 0?
Yeah. Well, you kind of have to look at what the average pay rise is or what the pay rise is for the minimum person, because we don't want to give optionality here. We don't want people to pick and choose what they do. This is a change to your pension policy, your pension contribution structure for everybody in the business. So I'm imagining everybody will get a 1% pay rise or more. So if you think of it like a watermark, move it up by 1% for everybody, and then whatever anyone was going to get paid above that, they still get paid that as an increase. And by doing that, we can help both the business and the employee. Because over a number of steps, and by starting early, don't leave this till 2028. By starting early, you can do it in little incremental steps. So it makes it easier to manage, easier to make it work across a bigger workforce. That's then going to minimize the impact to employees. They're not paying that extra money. They're keeping their pension contribution going in through salary sacrifice rather than through a less effective way. But in the example of that company with 250 staff, they're then saving that full £30,000. I'm saying saving, they're not incurring an additional cost. It's going to feel like a saving rather than having to spend that on national insurance. But the other impact it's having is if we don't do something, then people's feeling of goodwill towards pensions is going to change. At the moment, they're deemed as being really tax efficient. It's free money from the company, it's saving tax, it's helping me for my future. But it's amazing how when things are chipped away at, people's thought process changes.
Mhm.
From next year, they become less tax efficient on death. Okay, we have to die for that. So I'm not too worried about that right now. I'm young, I'm healthy, I'm living. But if you make it cost more to put money in or make it harder to put money in, then that's going to get my goat up even more. So, yeah, we want to help both the business and the employee through this.
And I guess just to throw, I can see a potential question or kind of reservation which lots of organizations will have from this is preempting that question that will come back from staff in terms of, well, hang on a minute, I actually want the pay rise coming to me. I don't want more money going into my pension. How do you think organizations can manage that potential friction?
With all of this, there's communication to be done, and that's why it won't work for all businesses. You need to assess, okay, well, how easy will it be to make the change? Will there be any outliers? Will there be any scenarios that this won't help? Because what we're not doing is allowing Dan to do this, David to do that, and
Mm.
Tash to do. It needs to be across the board to make it a proper bona fide change. Because it's not using salary sacrifice anymore. It's fundamentally changing the structure. So yeah, you need to think it through because you couldn't make one big step. Let's say you pay 4% at the moment. If you suddenly reverse that and people weren't getting a 4% pay rise, they couldn't do it anyway. But people are going to want to keep that pay rise. And by giving a balance of, okay, your pay goes up and your pension contribution goes down, it achieves the same thing. But thinking more broadly, you'd have to think about not pay because that won't be any different in terms of what goes into your bank. It's will it impact things like life cover? Your
Mhm.
life cover might be a multiple of basic salary, but it's easy to make it a multiple of salary plus pension contribution. Similarly with your income protection or other salary related benefits. So I think there's a solution to every question. It's just thinking it through and making it simple. Pensions are complicated enough anyway, so we need to take an approach which isn't going to create more work for everybody.
Yeah, yeah, it makes total sense because otherwise it can become an administrative nightmare, couldn't it?
Absolutely, and our whole mantra is about simplicity and clarity, and this could go against that. So we wouldn't encourage anybody to leave it late. We wouldn't encourage anyone to do anything without thinking about it. But now's a great time to just think, well, what is the impact? Work out that cost that's coming up because that's really easy to calculate. Well, it's really easy for us to calculate, both from the employer and the employee perspective. And for some companies, they might be able to do it in one step because they're only asking employees to pay in 2% or 1% or a very low amount. But I think if you can review your structure, your contributions, think about what other HR things are on the agenda, also be thinking about, well, how would you actually process this? Do you have a flexible benefits platform? Is it manual communication? Whatever it would be. Um, but certainly by having a bit of time to plan ahead, by phasing contributions and thinking how you're going to communicate to staff, we can turn something that's negative into something that I don't want to say is positive, but it's going to be at worst neutral. Um, so, companies aren't having to find that extra £30,000.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess it sounds like act now, review what's going on, take a look under the hoods, so to speak. So if there are HR directors, people managers, business owners watching, what would you say is the one thing they should take from today's discussion and kind of take forward?
Well, I'm assuming you're already using salary sacrifice. So if you are, let's think about how to maximize that for the future. But for everyone that is using it, there's one company out there who's not using it. So if you've never started to use it, you've actually got a definite advantage you can kind of create. And so, yeah, whether you are, whether you're not, a good time of year to review that, because a lot of budgets are going in now for next year. People are starting to create the budgets for next year. So yeah, it's a very timely thing to be considering.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Well, unless there's anything else, David, I think we've given that a bit of a whistle-stop tour. Is there anything you would like to add?
Well, it's not the most exciting thing to talk about, so I think we can wrap that up in 5 minutes. I think we've.
I don't know. We started talking about grass and gardening. I'm pretty sure this is an all-time low for us.
Thank you.
That's brilliant. No, thank you for joining me, David, and thank you for running us through that. As always, if anyone does have any questions, then please do get in touch. I think the key message from today's discussion is that whilst 2029 may feel a long way off, the organizations that start planning now will have more options available for them in the future than those who leave it until the last minute. What we've discussed today isn't necessarily about making big changes tomorrow. It's about understanding your current position, considering whether the contribution structure is future-proof, and taking advantage of the time that's available to you to make gradual adjustments where appropriate. If you'd like to understand what these changes can mean for your organization or simply sense check your current pension strategy, the team at Illumity are always here and happy to help. Thank you for listening to Benefits Wise. If you found today's episode useful, please share it with a fellow HR leader or indeed one of your colleagues, and we will see you on the next one. Thank you very much.